In this episode, I'm going to be talking about Ready Player Two. And guess what? Unlike other reviewers, I didn't hate it right after the intro. Welcome back to the DLJonesBooks channel, where I talk about all types of story topics, what I like about stories, how I listen to stories, anything story related when it comes to movies, TV shows, books, audiobooks, and video games. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about Ready Player Two. I listened to the audiobook. I want to tell you guys what I thought about it. I like talking about things that I like. If I read something and I don't like it, or I see a movie and I don't like it, where I can have problems with it and still talk about it. But if I just absolutely don't like something, I probably won't make a video about it. So knowing that, you can pretty much guess that I enjoyed Ready Player Two. But it's not as simple as that. I guess when I get into it, tell you the things about it that worked for me and things that didn't work, you'll see a little bit more, and you may get a little bit more of an idea of how I felt listening to this audiobook, which of course, yes, I did listen to it. Okay, so Ready Player Two starts off about 3 years at the end of the events of the first book. Wade and all of his crew, they all have settled down into their new lives. They're all millionaires or whatever, billionaires or whatever the equivalent in that world is. And they all have picked particular things that they want to focus on trying to make better. Samantha has certain things that she wants to do. Diato has something that he wants to do. H has something that she wants to do. Their lives have just gone on, pretty well. And the first book starts off pretty much giving you a good update of what's going on in all of their lives. One thing that the book did, though, that I kind of wasn't sure about at the beginning is that the book kind of broke the group up. They were pretty much not in touch. They weren't like the great best of friends like you figured they would be at the end of the first movie or the first book. They kind of been distant towards each other, even so much so as where Diato and H have pretty much been a lot of times ignoring and ducking and dodging Wade. You find this out by one thing that you find out Wade has been doing that kind of makes him not that much of a likable character. He uses his powers to spy on people through a lot of stuff in this book, but he wears this cloak, the same cloak that Halliday wore in the first book and movie, that allows him to travel all over the Oasis and go anywhere he wants. At the snap of a finger, he can go into private chats, and not only that, but he can go into private chats without them even knowing that he's there and listen to private chats and everything like that. So there's a part in the book where, he mentions knowing that his friends are avoiding him because he's able to spy on them, because he's able to look at their private chat, to know that they have other friends that they've made since all of this stuff happened in the events of the first book. And that kind of thing, I just kind of felt a little funny about that. Wade, I kind of thought of like the hero in the first book. He's the one to root for. And the second book starts off with him still being in that same role, but he's doing things that I kind of find questionable. Spying on people and being able to go around and check to see what everybody's doing, looking up things that are supposed to be private. All of that kind of stuff. There's even a section in the book where he meets a new person and he's kind of fond of this person in a platonic friendship fan type of way. He wants to know more about this person. And so what he does is he starts looking up this person's private information, find out this person's real name, where he lived, even goes so far as to use cameras that he had control of to look at the actual house that person lived in, and found out personal information about this person. And it just seemed kind of creepy to me. It just didn't give me a good feeling hearing that part. I'm like, this is Wade. This is the guy I rooted for in the first book. Why is he a creep now? I had that kind of feeling about a lot of different things throughout this book. You basically just find out that the characters that you looked highly on and thought highly of, you find out that they weren't good people in general. They were problematic. Now, speaking of his friends, there's something that I like that draws me to a lot of books and movies and stuff, and that's when you have that ensemble cast, a cast of characters, a cast of people that all interact with each other, the interactions they have with each other, them coming together to solve problems and stuff like that. You know, those are the type of things that I like, that attracts me to different types of media, to different types of storytelling. And the first book had it, you know, it grew gradually throughout the book, but the second book kind of took that away. For a large part of the second book, Wade was basically on his own. He's talking to himself. You know, the book is first person, so a lot of time it's coming through, everything you hear is coming through the main character. There wasn't a lot of other character interaction. I mean, they had it in spurts, but it wasn't like that Ensemble Cast anymore. They kind of narrowed it down to just be Wade by himself until the very end of the book. His friends, like I said, they were, you know, kind of not that close to him anymore. You know, they still was there when he called on them, and they still met up when they had their meetings and stuff. But in general, they weren't just like always just hanging out with him anymore. And you find out at the beginning that him and Samantha, they end up, you know, becoming a couple, but then that was short-lived. Well, they were still together at the beginning of this book, but that quickly was taken away because they had an argument about something that he believed in and she didn't, and they couldn't come to terms, and they kind of ended their relationship over that. For a large part of the book, it was just Wade. It wasn't like an ensemble cast, which is fine. You know, I'm kind of drawn towards those ensemble casts when it comes to stories that I like. But, you know, and this had it in the first book, but it was taken away in the second book, for a large part of the second book. Wade finds out, you know, he goes snooping through some stuff, through some things, and he finds out that there's a whole new contest. Sort of like the first book, you know, they had the contest where they had to find the Easter eggs. Well, in the second book, they come up with a reason for there to be another contest. Come to find out there's another contest that was hidden. He found only after he found really interesting VR technology that was hidden from everybody. He found this technology, and that was one of the things that Wade and Sam had issues with, because he wanted this technology to go out to the world, and Sam thought it was irresponsible to send this technology out to the world, and they couldn't agree on it. But he decided to go against Sam's wishes, you know, and he put the technology out to the world. And, you know, after using it for a while, that's when this new contest pops up. This time it's not Easter eggs, it's shards. They got to find shards. And this time it's not 3 Easter eggs or 3 items they got to find. They have to find 7 shards. It was 7 of them this time. Now, the big difference between this one and the last one, if you remember in the first one, you know, Wade and his crew, you know, his crew comes together because they're all around the same point in finding the Easter eggs. But in this one, no, none of his crew really looks for it. Samantha she was in such disagreement with him on this new technology that she didn't even have the item that caused him to, she wouldn't even use the item, the new VR technology that, allowed him to find the new contest. You know, just was getting nowhere. He was getting nowhere with finding it. You didn't have that thing with him figuring things out like in the first book. You didn't have that. He just basically was lost, at a loss. They focused a lot on him, you know, in retrospective about him and Sam's relationship, which by this time there was no more relationship. You know, he was just at a loss. So much so he did the same thing that the bad guy in the first book did. He put out a sort of like a bounty, offering money for someone that would give him clues to help him find one of the shards. Someone do step up after a while. Someone do step up. They have clues to find the shard, the first shard. He pays the person like $1 million, and that person does have the information. And the person, along with meeting this person, you find out that this person has a whole crew of 5 people, just like his crew, which they called themselves the High Five, and this new crew called themselves the Low Five. And it was really interesting because they brought on a new cast of characters that kind of modeled themselves after Wade and his crew of friends. And I thought this was going to be something. I thought this was going to be something that was going to be brought out. And I was like, okay, that's why they kind of pushed his friends away, because now he got this new group of friends. And this new group of friends and Wade is going to be the focus of this book. Nope. The new group of friends, you only meet the one. They talk about the other ones, but the main one that had the tip is the only one that he really dealt with. And that only lasted long enough for him to get the first shard. And then that group kind of gets pushed in the background. And you don't hear nothing from them no more till the end of the book for the most part. I want to take this time here to ask you to make sure you subscribe to the channel by clicking the like button and the subscribe button below if you like to hear more content about story-related topics. And make sure you click the bell also so you get notified when new videos are posted. But then this is where it became kind of tough to continue. It brings you to this middle part of the book, which I kind of found pretty dull. You know, the only reason I stuck with it, like I enjoyed the beginning, you know, of course, hearing about everything that's happening, how the world's changed, how the lives of all of the characters from book one have changed. That was interesting. And then up until this new contest comes about, that was interesting, but then it just got pretty dull. Got dull for, I felt like a really large portion of the middle part of the book. And it kind of picked up again at the end. By the end, I was back hooked. They kind of went through the same, brought me back with the same thing that hooked me in the first book with a lot of the trivia and stuff like that. Although not done quite as well as the first book, but it was still there and it was enough to bring me back into the story again. But basically, you know, the book is pretty much, they found a way to repeat the first story. They had the same contest that you had to do with the same doing quest, even though the quests from book two were not quite as interesting. The mix of the pop culture and nostalgia and all of that stuff didn't quite work. It worked for some and not as well for others. Overall, it was enough for me because I, from the beginning, always wondered how they was even going to do a second book, you know. I don't know. It was a lot of things that in this book that came to light that you find that just wasn't, that I didn't feel, I wasn't happy with the decision of these choices. Like I wasn't happy. It pretty much made Wade out to be not such a great guy. Then the whole contest that was brought on in book two, you know, was another Holiday contest, but then you find out that Holiday was actually a really, really bad guy. You know, he was horrible, you know, and it kind of makes you look at it and be like, wow, you know, all of the people that we were kind of beloved in the first book, we found out that they're like creepy, horrible people, you know, and it doesn't change. The book ends with them being creepy, horrible people. And I don't know how I feel about that, you know. Sometimes you have somebody that's creepy and horrible, you know, and then as long as they go through the book, you know, they kind of grow, they kind of learn their ways and they kind of change. And then by the end of the book, they become better people. Doesn't really happen in this book. By the end of the book, they're just creepy people that does a lot of invasion of privacy and does a lot of despicable things. And it doesn't change. At the end, they are still those people. Now they say I've learned, but it doesn't change anything. They still, like, even the book even ends with Wade saying, finally agreeing with Samantha on the disagreement that they had, which was, the disagreement was a kind of like a controversial type argument debate that they had back and forth with each other. And it ends with Wade saying, I understand you were right. I agree. And they made up. But they go right back and turn it right back around by her saying that, no, you were right. We did the right thing, you know. So there was no learning in this book by any of the characters. They just were horrible characters, and the story ended with them being horrible characters. They solved the problem. They solved the quest. They did what they set out to do, but they didn't learn from it. It just ended with a feeling of, like, I don't know if they even deserve to have, you know, solved this problem, you know. I kind of wanted more from them. If I take that out, you know, I know I talk about that and that makes it sound real bad. And that's the problem, that if you look at a lot of the reviews where a lot of the other people that listen to the audiobook or read the book have, you know, talked about this book, they're probably saying a lot of the same things I say. And for them, it made them dislike the book. It made them think that it was horrible. For me, I had problems with it, but it wasn't enough for me to make me feel like I disliked the book. There was still a lot of things in the book that I liked. Even though it wasn't done as well as the first book, I still like all of the references. I still like the pop culture. I like the quest. I like the unique ways they came up with the different quests that they had to solve, you know. And I'm not going to give any of them away because there's one huge one at the end that I really enjoyed. You know, I thought it was really interesting. And the new ideas they brought in as far as the VR technology was really, really interesting. You know, it was really interesting. And they didn't really go into it enough, I feel like. They went into it enough to get to where you had to go on quest again, but I didn't think they really got into it enough, you know, to really show how much of an impact in the world that this could have been and explore that further, which if they would have went a different route with the story, not go a route where they find another quest and basically repeat, you know, the first book and the second book, if they went a different route, came up with something completely different and brought in this VR technology, they would have had more room to play with it than they did with this book. You know, they just tried to fit this into another Easter egg hunt, you know, which kind of made it so that, you know, the new technology was brought in. It was interesting, but they didn't go too deep into it other than the people of the high five, you know, the top group of people all had different feelings about this technology. One thing that's always important to me is the narration of the book, which, you know, Ready Player One was narrated by Will Wheaton, which I loved his narration. I would say that him narrating the book he's probably one of my top people as far as the narrators who I know by name. Of course, I mentioned in another video that the narrator that really got me hooked on audiobooks was Ray Porter, who narrated a lot of Peter Clines books, which not to get confused with Ernest Clines, who wrote the Ready Player One and Ready Player Two. I would say Will Wheaton, you know, is another one. I kind of put him along the same lines as Ray Porter as far as how I enjoy his narration of stories, you know. So Will Wheaton, once again, he did a great job. You know, he brought those characters to life. He brought the story to life, and he kept me engaged in the story throughout the whole story. Even the parts that I was not completely feeling around the middle, the slog, his narration was enough to keep me listening to get to, which I'm glad he did, because the end of the book I really enjoyed. And his narration kept me through the parts that I wasn't quite enjoying as much and caused me to, you know, be able to see the stuff that I did like when it got back into, you know, being interesting again. Would I recommend you see it? I enjoyed the book. I had problems with it, but I still enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it as much as Ready Player One. I really enjoyed Ready Player One. I enjoyed Ready Player One a lot. And I enjoy Ready Player Two. I wouldn't say a lot, but I enjoy it. And it's a good movie. It's a good book to check out if you know you're going to see the movie anyway. You might as well just get the audiobook and listen to it. But that's Ready Player Two, and that's my thought on it. And I will see you next time.